Have you ever been pushed to the edge, where you just couldn't let it slide anymore? Well, I was. And this wasn't some small inconvenience. No. This was a full-on invasion of my space, my property, my sanctuary. It all started on an ordinary Saturday morning when a woman I'd never met decided my garage was her personal parking spot. She didn't ask. She didn't care about my rules, my boundaries, or even the fact that my garage is, well, my garage. So what did I do? Did I politely ask her to move? Of course not. I had something much bigger planned. You see, when you deal with people who think they can take whatever they want because they feel entitled, sometimes you have to remind them, big time, that there are consequences. But before you think I'm some petty, vengeful person, just wait. What I did might sound extreme, but trust me, she had it coming. By the end of this, you'll understand why I had no choice but to take the route I did. Now, let's rewind to the beginning. It was a typical Saturday morning when I first noticed it. There it was, parked right in my garage, a shiny black SUV I didn't recognize. My confusion was instant. Garages aren't public parking lots, so I was left wondering if I was dealing with a misplaced car or some sort of bad joke. I walked over to it and saw a woman unloading groceries from the back. She barely looked up as I stood there, hands on my hips, trying to make sense of the situation. And then, without a care in the world, she casually said, "Hello." Something about that one word just set off a warning bell in my mind. It was as though she thought she was at her own home. The tension was thick. I approached her, keeping my voice even, but the anger simmering inside me was palpable. "Excuse me, but you're parked in my garage." She glanced at me, shrugged, and replied, "Oh, I thought this was the extra spot for guests." My bad. This wasn't just a misunderstanding, it was entitlement, pure and simple. I could feel it in her tone, the audacity. I explained calmly at first that this wasn't a guest parking area, that I had a rule about not parking in other people's garages. But she cut me off, saying, "I'm only here for a minute. No big deal, right?" At that moment, the annoyance inside me spiked. I wanted to tell her to leave right then and there, but I realized this wasn't just about parking anymore. This was about respect. I took a step back, inhaled slowly, and said, "You need to move. Now." She gave an exaggerated sigh but didn't budge. Was she testing me? Or was she just that oblivious to how rude she was being? Either way, I wasn't about to let it slide. And that was just the beginning. What came next would escalate in ways I couldn't have imagined. The escalation. It wasn't just the parking violation that set me off. No, she wasn't done yet. This woman parked in my garage again. But this time, she left me a smug little note under my door. It read, "I'll be back. Try not to be so uptight." I was livid. It wasn't about the garage anymore. It was about the principle. She thought she could just walk all over me, and I wasn't going to let that happen. But rather than confronting her head-on, I decided to take a more strategic route. One she'd never expect. I called my HOA. Big mistake on her part. This wasn't just a small neighborhood issue anymore. It was turning into something much more official. The HOA sent a few warnings about the unauthorized parking, but guess who ignored them? Yep, you guessed it. Mrs. No Big Deal was back, and this time it wasn't just the SUV. It was a truck, and her SUV? Well, it had a bumper sticker I couldn't ignore. "My rights are your problem." I was beyond angry, but I knew that this wasn't about parking anymore. It was about power, and I wasn't going to let her have it. Not this time. The big move. But here's where it all really got wild. Not only did she continue parking in my garage, but she started spreading rumors. She called my neighbors, telling them I was harassing her, that I had no right to be so upset over parking. She even threatened to sue me for emotional distress. She called the cops. Yes, you heard that right. Over a parking spot. But what really set me off was when she started to try and get me on a public nuisance charge. That was when I realized this wasn't just about parking. This was about control, and I wasn't going to let her have it. I had already seen her SUV parked there far too many times. I knew her schedule, when she'd come and go. and I was about to turn her whole world upside down. The ultimate payback. I waited until one of those afternoons when I knew she'd be coming back to her beloved garage. I waited until she was unloading her groceries again. I walked over to her SUV, and with a grin, I unlocked my garage door. What she didn't expect was the for sale sign that greeted her. That's right. I didn't just want her car gone. I wanted her whole sense of control shattered. I had listed my garage for sale, and not just any sale. I went all out, a local listing, legal agreements. And, here's the fun part. Her SUV was still inside. The moment she showed up to find her car gone and the garage sold was priceless. The confusion on her face was something I'll never forget. She was stunned. Then, anger started to flood her expression. And that was the moment I knew I'd won. The confrontation that followed was even more satisfying. She saw the new owner chatting with the realtor and flipped out. "Excuse me. That's my car. Get my SUV out of there," she screamed, but I stood off to the side, watching it all unfold, hands in my pockets, savoring the moment. The realtor, who had been thoroughly briefed, stepped in. "Ma'am, I'm sorry, but the garage has already been sold. The transaction is complete. Your vehicle is now legally property of the new owner." And just like that, her sense of entitlement deflated in front of her. The new owners, the neighbors, and everyone else who had been witness to her antics. They were all watching as the reality of the situation set in. And me? I just stood back and whispered under my breath, "No one owns a thing without respect." The final word. Looking back, I'll admit, maybe it was a little extreme. But sometimes people need a wake-up call. You don't get to walk all over others just because you think you can. I walked away that day knowing that my garage, my space, was finally mine again, and maybe, just maybe, she learned a valuable lesson in humility. But I want to know, what would you have done? Would you have taken the high road or gone full-on revenge mode like I did? Drop a comment below and let me know how you would have handled it. And if you made it to the end of this wild ride, go ahead and comment "Justice served" if you think I did the right thing. Because trust me, it wasn't just my garage that was sold. It was a lesson in respect. Until next time, stay sharp and stand your ground.